What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, we're going to be answering the question, is Erling Haaland essential for our Game Week 1 squads? And we're basically going to do that by a bit of a premium attacker analysis. So we're going to look at the fixtures, captaincy rotation, the stats. We're going to adjust the stats as well for Haaland because obviously he has come from the Bundesliga. So we'll apply that Bundesliga tax to see where he comes out. And then I've got some closing thoughts as well. So if you enjoy this video and you find it useful, please do give it a like. Hit that subscribe button as well if you want to see more content during pre-season. Let's jump into it. So let's take a bit of a look at the overview of Haaland before we jump into comparing him to other players, right? So he's coming at 11.5 million. I got to be honest, I think that's a little bit on the cheap side. When I knew that he was coming to Man City and when that transfer went through before the price reveals, I thought he was going to be £12 million minimum, given that Lukaku came in at 11.5 and I think Haaland is definitely rated higher. Ronaldo was 12.5 last year. I know he's obviously had an incredible history, but in terms of kind of top talents in world football right now, there's like Haaland and Mbappe are probably the top two, I would say, especially when it comes to forward players that are going to get you goals and assists as well. So already I think the 11.5 million price tag is a little low, and that is probably then corresponding to the ownership, which is incredibly high at the time recording. That may come down as more FPL managers log into the game and start building teams, but for someone new to the league to have 64.9% ownership, that kind of tells you what people are thinking he can do, right? He's coming into the team that pretty much always score the most amount of goals every single season. He's going to be leading their line as the number 9. The prospects are real, and if you look at his stats, both for expected goals and assists as well as his goals and assists from last season, is pretty incredible. So he averaged a goal or 1.04 goals every 90 minutes, right? And I know people will talk about the fact you can, some people have said in the comments, like, just to completely ignore the stats, they're pointless because they were in another league. They're still useful, right? It doesn't mean that they apply directly to the Premier League and other players, and I'm going to adjust them later on to show you. But it's still ridiculous levels, right? This is, as we know, one of the best young players in the league, in the world right now. And a lot of people have talked about his injuries. I get that, but if he's fit to start the season and you have him in your team and he gets injured, you can use a transfer to remove him. He had 21 starts last year, and the fixtures look pretty good. West Ham away, I mean, with the colour coding for the fixtures, we have to remember this is Man City, best team in the league, right? So they will keep plenty of clean sheets, will score plenty of goals against anyone. West Ham away is not necessarily the best fixtures to start off, but then they've got Bournemouth, Newcastle, Palace, Nottingham Forest and Villa all in the opening 6. So they should be able to score a fair few goals, and Haaland will probably be a part of that, okay? Now, these are how his stats are kind of, you know, compared basically to other premium players. So Salah is top. That's why he's talked about a lot. That's why he's in a lot of our teams as well. That's why I won't start the season without him, because you don't need to adjust his numbers. He's done that in the Premier League. 0.89 expected goal involvement per 90 is incredible. Haaland's only just behind that for 1.5 million less. Now, obviously, he's a forward, so he won't get extra point for the goal, extra point for clean sheet, but he will kind of get a better use of the bonus system when he does score goals. So 0.88 is pretty incredible. Then you got Kane and Son, who are ever reliable. You know exactly what we're going to get from them. They got a whole pre-season under Conte. The Spurs have got loads of their signings done early. I think Spurs are definitely going to be a force to reckon with, and I don't really care about how bad Kane's start was last year. I think he knows he's not going to City now. He knows he's got Conte at Spurs. He knows there's a chance to win something, not necessarily the Premier League, right? But he could win a cup there under Conte, so I think he'll be raring to go. So we know what we're going to get from them. De Bruyne is a player that I would probably avoid just because I think the 4 premiums above are better, and I really just put Ronaldo on just to kind of fill out the graphic. I could have put Fernandes on there, but realistically I think people would need a lot of convincing with Man United, so they're probably not going to go for them straight away. Now, if we adjust the stats for Haaland, right, and I've looked at a few articles, I might try and link one in the description below. There's a Bundesliga Tax, and a lot of stats people have looked into it, and they've compared lots of different players that have moved from the Bundesliga to the Premier League and seen how their stats differ, and I took about an average of about 14.5% drop. So even if you apply that to Haaland, he's still at 0.74 expected goal involvement when I rounded it up, which is still very comparable to Kane and Son. You could take it down a little bit further and say, well, Kane, Son and Salah, they've done it in the Premier League for absolutely years, and Haaland is new to the league. So, but even if you drop that down even more, he's still going to be like one of the top talents. You don't need stats to know that, but when I talk about stats, people often say it doesn't matter because it's from the Bundesliga. So that's why I wanted to go for it. So I think even if you think he drops a bit more, he is still probably going to be a better pick than De Bruyne. Because one of the arguments on my Avoid video when I mentioned De Bruyne was that he is going to be feeding Haaland, therefore he's going to get a lot of assists. But that completely missed the point I was making in that video, that if that does happen, Haaland scoring the goals, they are worth more. When a forward scores goals, they do really well on the bonus system as well. So Haaland's looking damn good, right? And I do think he's, we all agree he's a much better option than Ronaldo as well. So Salah is still the king, but Haaland could be in and around Kane and Son's levels next year. And I think the fact that he's going to Man City really makes a difference. Like Sancho last year, we did a similar analysis, but he came into Man United. Man United were awful. Solskjaer then got sacked. Rangnick didn't do any better. Sancho just didn't start off well. I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case with Haaland. I think going into that Man City team, Pep's got the respect. They listen to Pep. If you don't, you're out. And I think that is kind of key. That's a big difference between him and Sancho. Obviously, you've got like Havertz, De Bruyne, Son. They all came from the Bundesliga. So it's not like every player that arrives does badly straight away. I think a lot of people talk about new signings to the league. There's plenty of players, not just from the Bundesliga, that have come into the Premier League and hit the ground running. So for me, I'm not really too concerned about that. If we look at the fixtures, again, if we assume that most people are going to go with Salah, which I think a lot will, and when I say most or everyone, I don't mean literally everyone, but I think a lot of engaged managers will go for him. And the fact that he has Fulham away on the opening day of the season kind of almost locks him into a lot of our teams. You could make an argument that Southampton at home for Spurs is a better option or as good, but I think most people will go for Salah against the newly promoted side. And then I think the thing that kind of kicks it towards Haaland instead of Kane or Son is that Game Week 2 fixture, Bournemouth at home, instead of Chelsea away. And the rotation between those three teams seems to work slightly better with Liverpool and Man City than it does with Liverpool and Spurs, because they've both got a good fixture on the opening day. And then you either choose between Chelsea away or Palace at home. So you're going to go for Palace. Then it's Man United away or Wolves at home. And I think the rotation between Liverpool and City for the opening 5 weeks, you could have Salah against Fulham, Haaland against Bournemouth, then Salah against Man United or Haaland against Newcastle, depending on how you're feeling. Then you would absolutely take Salah against Bournemouth at home instead of Kane or Son against Nottingham Forest away, I think. At Anfield, you're always going to back Salah over Kane and Son. And then for Game Week 5, Haaland then has Nottingham Forest at home, which is probably better than Newcastle at home and definitely better than West Ham away. So I think it's just a case that at the start of the season, unless you're going to go through for a 3 premium strategy, you've kind of got to decide on 2, and captaincy should be a big part of your decision-making process. If you think that, Salah is fine for Palace and you can just not captain Spurs players against Chelsea, and then you're happy to captain Spurs against Wolves and Nottingham Forest, you could go for Son or Kane instead. But for this, or for my thinking, I just think that Liverpool and Man City rotate a bit better. And if Haaland's going to get regular minutes, I think he is a better option than De Bruyne. And he's cheaper. And he fills up one of your forward spots as well. I have included Man United, Chelsea and Leicester. I've put Leicester on there because they've got Vardy at 9.5 million. Vardy always starts the season well. They've got no Europe either this year. But I just think Arsenal away and Chelsea away in the opening 4 fixtures means I probably wouldn't go for him. I've included Chelsea, although at the time recording this, maybe even before it goes out, it might have changed. They don't have a premium player right now, at least at a premium price, but it does look like Sterling will move from Man City. I actually think Sterling could have a really, really good season at Chelsea. A lot will depend on rotation, but you'd imagine he will get more minutes at Chelsea than he did at Man City, and he is an incredible attacker, and he should keep that, I assume, on the left spot kind of nailed down. And I do like Chelsea's opening fixtures: Everton, Leeds, Leicester and Southampton. Spurs at home maybe a bit trickier. The one thing I would say, I think most people are still going to go for 2 from Liverpool, Man City and Spurs, and it's just whether or not you can fit that third premium, like at a £10 million price point, like Fernandes, Ronaldo or Sterling in your team. And I think most people will find it difficult, so they won't go for it straight away. But for anyone that's thinking of Sterling, if he goes to Chelsea, I do like those fixtures, albeit 3 of the first 5 are away. But I think he will lock down more minutes there, and I think his underlying stats are good. He is a bit of a goal scorer. I know a lot of people think he can only score tap-ins, but being able to get into those positions is a skill in itself. And I do think when he gets a run of games, rather than being in and out of the team, that probably will help him. And I think with Man United, you know, Fernandes at 10, Ronaldo at 10.5, if Ronaldo's even at the club by the time the season starts, the fixtures just aren't as good as the other teams really on this list, or most of them. So we are probably looking at 2 premiums from Liverpool, City and Spurs. All 3 of them have got pretty good fixtures. I just personally think the Liverpool and Man City ones rotate, although I would like Kane or Son for that Southampton game and that Nottingham Forest game. You could, just lastly on the fixtures, you could go for Kane or Son, probably Kane just because he's a forward, for game week 1 and then switch to Haaland game week 2. I don't think that's necessarily an awful move, but lots can happen in the first couple of games of the season. Suddenly players will be doing really well that you weren't expecting. Players will be doing badly that you know were hoping that would do well. There'll be players that are starting that you didn't think would. There'll be players that aren't starting that you thought would, etc., etc. So booking in the transfer straight away might not be ideal. And as I come on to kind of closing thoughts, we will have the Community Shield before game week 1. So if Haaland starts that against Liverpool, does really well, I don't think anyone's going to be worried about him having to play against West Ham. Some people have got concerns over minutes. Again, pre-season and the Community Shield will tell us a lot about that. I don't really have too many concerns, right? The Champions League doesn't start until after game week 6, so there's no other games apart from Premier League games to come. And if, like a lot of people are saying, that Haaland has been brought in to try and get them that Champions League trophy in particular, they're going to want him integrated into the side before that happens, right? It is going to be a slightly different way of playing than having more of a false 9 like Foden or Bernardo Silva or De Bruyne or whoever it is. And so because of that, I think he is going to get regular minutes. I think some people have concerns. I don't really have those concerns at all. Like I just said, Liverpool City captaincy rotation is pretty good. The one thing I really want to get across about Kane and Son, they are proven options. I think you know they're going to probably hit the ground running under that full pre-season with Conte, like I mentioned earlier. We know their underlying numbers are good. We know they score plenty of goals. We know they get plenty of assists as well. And I am backing Spurs right now as it stands to get that 3rd place pretty much locked in. I do think they're going to do better than Chelsea this year. We'll have to wait and see who Chelsea sign as well. And so there's nothing wrong with going for Kane or Son over Haaland at all, but I would strongly think about your captaincy options. If you're happy to go the Salah, Kane route, the Salah Son route, that's perfectly fine. I don't want to, force people into one way or another, but I would give it strong consideration because captaincy is key when it comes to FPL. One question I would have, and this I'm almost having this for myself, because originally I really wanted Haaland, then I kind of thought actually I might go for Kane instead. But is it worth fighting the ownership? Haaland's 64.9% owned at the time of recording. That might drop, but he's not going to, unless he's injured, he's not going to suddenly drop to 10 or 20% ownership. It is going to be massively high, and I don't like selecting players on ownership, and I don't do it that often, but if it's a deciding factor because I'm pretty unsure about which way to go because it's so close, then I might take ownership into account. So if Kane goes into the season at 10 to 20% ownership and Haaland is 50 to 60, and I'm looking at it thinking, well, I do really like Kane, but I'm not 100% sure he's that much of a better option than Haaland in that Man City team that are going to score loads of goals, I probably will just take the higher owned players so that I don't get left behind too quickly. And again, when I make my decisions, I really try to not look at ownership at all. But sometimes it can be a factor to use, right? And that's only when it's close. If you're thinking, Andy, you're talking rubbish, Kane is a much, much better option than Haaland, forget about the ownership, just go with Kane instead. And lastly, just to finish off, no one is essential. I get that. I actually don't like the term essential, but a lot of people use it. Instead of essential, as in they have to be in your team, I prefer to look at it as they're very, 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 very good options. And Haaland's not essential, but he is an extremely good option. And I think we've been waiting for that Aguero replacement for a while. Someone that's going to start quite regularly, probably get penalties as well, in a team that scores 90 plus goals in most seasons. He looks good. So I've got to be honest, after researching this video, doing the comparison of the stats, looking at the fixtures, I am probably Haaland over Kane at this point. That might change as we go forward, but I think 11.5 million at City is just too good to turn down. So if you've enjoyed that video, please do give it a like. Let me know below which premium players are you going for. Hit me up in the comments and I'll try and have a look through some of them as well. And of course, if you have been enjoying the content, if you've enjoyed this video, you want to see more in pre-season, you want to help me get to 300,000 subscribers, please do hit that subscribe button. It really does help. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you again tomorrow for another video. See you soon.